Hello, I'm Dr. Townsend, and I'm a chemistry professor here at St. Mary's College of Maryland. And these are some of my research students, and they would like to introduce themselves too, I guess.
My name is Nick. I'm a chemistry major at the math and physics minor, and I do research with Dr. Townsend.
Hi, I'm Noah. I'm a physics major with math and computer science double minor, and I'm a junior, and I do research here with Dr. Townsend.
Hello, my name's David. I'm a math physics double major, and I just started doing research with Townsend at the beginning of this semester.
Right.
So, why did you guys choose St. Mary's?
Okay. I chose St. Mary's. I chose to come to St. Mary's because way back when I graduated high school, I came from a little tiny private school. It was about 14 people. And so my original choice was Virginia Tech, which is huge. I think there's probably about 1.5 billion people there. And it was pretty bad. So I looked at St. Mary's and I found it was a really small school. It was a really good fit. And so I ended up coming here because I like the teacher-student ratio. It's really nice. And there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of opportunity to do research and whatnot as a student here, which is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess I went to high school a little bigger than 14 people, but I also valued coming to a small school where you can really get to know your professors and really do research with them. I was kind of choosing between here and UMaryland. UMaryland was significantly larger, so I wanted a much smaller interaction to have interaction with professors. Also, the physics department has a good connection with the naval base nearby, and so that was a great opportunity to get on there and do some interesting work there as well. As long as also I think what is also cool is the interdisciplinary work here that you can really get involved with different academic disciplines. You don't have to be stuck if you're a math major, be stuck with just math people, or chemistry major just stuck with chemists. You can really get to know other people in other disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really know much about the school before I came. All I knew was my stepsisters had gone here and they graduated. So I visited once and I really liked the campus and the people seemed really awesome. So I just went for it and it's been the best decision I've ever made.
Wow.
Honestly.
Yeah. So as a professor, it's a little bit different for me. I'm choosing between schools to teach at and work at and start a career. So different people have different ideas of what they value in a school. And so mine were, I wanted really excellent students. I wanted a beautiful place to work. I wanted a school that supported my research interests and supported me. And I felt like a community here with my faculty and my administration. The other thing that I really valued was a place to do research, not just teach, because a lot of professors are just teaching and a lot of openings are for teachers just to lecture. And one thing I really value is to continue the research that I worked on in my postdoc in grad school, but also branch out into my own new research field and answer new questions that have never been answered before. It's really exciting to me.
Great. So, as a student at St. Mary's, obviously being a part of research opportunities and really getting that experiential learning aspect to college is important at St. Mary's. So, do you want to touch a little bit on just the research that you're doing and then how your students are also incorporated in that as well?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start out on the projects that we're working on and why experiential learning is important for everybody. So we have a liberal arts school here, as you know, and a lot of people think, oh, if I go to liberal arts school, I will only learn history, English, or just nothing in science. And so I think St. Mary's is a testament to the idea that we can give an awesome science program here with research, even though it's liberal arts. And I think Noah was saying this before, is that what's really cool is not only are you getting that science, but you're also getting the other stuff too that you really need to become a leader in society. And I think that our students are the next generation of leaders because they have that background. The projects that we're working on, I think, are the coolest projects around. And my students would probably agree. Would you agree? Yeah. So one of the projects that we're working on is we have a 3D printing lab. We have several 3D printers. We have multiple plastics that we can use to print out of. We have hard ones, flexible ones. We can print multiple plastics together and make some really interesting stuff. And David's going to tell you a little bit about that. We also have the school's first nano imaging machine, and that's what this is over here. Let's see, you're panning over there. That's good. This is an atomic force microscope. It can. It's actually scanning right now. It's looking at nanometer size features on a grid, and Noah's going to tell us a little bit about that and why that's important to our research, because we're doing materials science, and it's the first lab at St. Mary's to do material science. And so one of the aspects of materials is that we have to actually look at the material, and so this is the machine that can do that. And then Nick is here representing our solar printing project, and I think that's crazy that not too long from now we'll have a printed solar cell, which will be cheap and easily scalable to make large-scale roll-to-roll printing. So I'll let them talk about that.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things I'm doing with Dr. Townsend is utilizing this all the 3D printing stuff that we have here. So the 3D printer and the filament extruder itself, and we can take raw plastic pellets and we can put them inside of our plastic extruder, and we can extrude out filament that we'd want to print with in the 3D printer. And one of the key benefits of that is we can mix different kinds of plastic that you wouldn't normally be able to do with commercially available rolls of plastic. So we can make our own blends and our own kind of what you can do whatever you would want to do with it, basically. And so we can do that with our extruder. And one of the other things we're doing is we have our 3D printer has 2 nozzles on it, so we can do a combination of rigid and soft plastics, or like completely flexible plastics that we could extrude out of our plastic extruder, basically. And so we can try combinations of different things within our 3D printer and make rigid skeletons with a flexible outer layer on it, kind of like like your arm or something like that, with muscle tissue and bone underneath of it, for different projects. Like we have a drone project going on with another student who's doing research here. And so that's kind of my end of it. It's the 3D printing kind of side of it, and using CAD programs, like computer-aided design programs such as Fusion 360 or SolidWorks are the 2 main ones that I use to kind of experiment with designs and then print them out. So that's kind of my end of it.
So I'm going to keep going with that, if that's okay. This is a quadcopter, remote control, unmanned air system. And right now, this is a design that we grabbed off the internet. Someone else designed this with a CAD program. We didn't, but we 3D printed it. My student Barbara and Tyler are working on 3D printing these, and high school students around the area are doing this too. But it's really cool that you can print this out and have it fly around, and that's the project. But the thought is, maybe this is too rigid and it might break when it hits the wall, but is it possible to print hard plastic in the middle and soft plastic on the outside? So it's kind of like bones. This thing would have little bones, and it might be a little bit flexible and move a little bit like this. So it could bounce into a wall and maybe bounce off or something and survive. So that's a cool thing with the 3D printer. David mentioned flexible plastics. Here's a shoe. This shoe is flexible. As you can see, it's a really flexible plastic here. This is the biggest one that I can make. I wanted to have a shoe that I could wear. So the printer that we had only could do this, so I decided to get a new printer that was bigger so that it would fit my foot. That's the only reason we got the bigger printer. So I'm going to print, that's the first thing we're going to do, is print out a flexible shoe that fits me, and I'll be walking around in 3D printed shoes. that's not the only reason, but it's a good reason. Yeah. So back to this, the quadcopter, we downloaded the program, the file, but it wasn't the right size. All the measurements were off. So David is helping us with computer-aided designing the actual structure that we want with the computer, and that's what he has experience with, and he actually is helping train me on that. So that's all I got for that. Do you want to talk about the AFM and the?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, so the AFM is the atomic force microscope, which works at incredibly small scale we're using it to determine thicknesses of materials around the nanometer scale. And so as you can see on the desktop right here on the left, we're looking at a calibration grid, which is on the order of about, I think like 50 micrometers. And it's just continuously scanning up and down, where we have in the actual device, there's this tiny, probably small, about nanometer size tip that basically fundamentally bounces above the material and senses the atomic force, the Van der Waals force from the materials and atoms in the material. And it has a laser interferometer that hits the tip, and that's used to create incredibly accurate, incredibly sensitive images of materials we're looking at, including the one on the right is we believe, a nanowire. So that's incredibly important for our research with the perovskite solar cells and other applications as well. And it's just it's important to be able to, we can accurately gather thicknesses and look at the grains of surfaces at incredibly small scale, which is something we have not been able to do before. So it's incredible.
Yeah, so NOAA has taken the lead on these nanoscale imaging techniques, and we pass him a sample, he takes a measurement and get the image, and then from there we know what to do with our experiments. Do we change it, or is it good? So we won't know that unless we look at it. So Elena, is my student, is hiding back there. She couldn't make it today, but she is our nanowire synthesis expert. She made that nanowire that's on the screen, and we took an image of it. So that thing is only a few nanometers thick and several micrometers wide. And the cool thing about nanowires is that they will transport a charge just like a regular wire. And if you put a grid of them down on the surface, you can create a surface that's transparent to light. It's like a fence, like a chain link fence, I guess. Transparent to light, but it's also conductive in 2 dimensions. So it's basically like having a piece of metal that's there, but it's also transparent. Have you ever heard of a transparent metal before? No, I haven't. But this is a way to do it, and that's what we use to make our solar cells. So speaking of solar cells,
yes.
Go to Nick.
So my focus here is on making what's called a perovskite solar cell. And essentially why we'd want to do that is because we can make solar cells out of inks and make thin film photovoltaic technology. Got the word right.
The word.
And that's really important to us because the conventional blue solar cells that you see around, they're made of crystalline silicon. And those are very energy intensive to make, and it takes some time to regain the energy, the carbon intensive energy that it took to essentially, it's heat that you need to make all this. So with this perovskite solar cell, we think that we don't need heat, and it's very cheap to produce comparatively, so that's why we're interested in it.
You guys definitely sound like experts in all those research projects, so that's pretty awesome. One thing for the students, I just want to get your opinion on how do you guys think this experience with direct research is going to benefit you moving forward throughout your college career and then even after?
Wow. Well, I started doing research here last year, my freshman year. And since then, I've gained a really intimate understanding of how chemicals work with each other. It's one thing to learn about it in lecture, and even the labs that go with lecture, you focus on certain things, but the kind of things I deal with, like how different solvents behave in different kinds of plastics, which are important for our ink printer over there, is something that I don't think I would have learned unless I have done this. In addition to that, there are just a bunch of small like lab techniques that aren't formally taught to you, but you only learn through making mistakes, and I've made a lot of mistakes. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think in undergrad, by just taking classes, generally you tend to believe that there's always an answer to whatever question you're given, but generally in research, there isn't usually an answer that's known. So you have to find an answer using different techniques, and also sometimes you're still developing the question, you're still developing different hypotheses and theories, and that's really important if you want to go into graduate research, and just in general, just understanding that you can't always be right, and that's fine, and that you sometimes progress is slow, and you need to just keep moving forward and be tenacious.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a loaded question. It's kind of interesting being in the lab versus like doing like a problem set you would get from a professor in homework or something. They're like two fundamentally different things. And when you're in the lab, you have actually you have access to a whole bunch of other people that you can work with, and you can, if you have a question about something, you can walk over to somebody else and pick their brain for a minute and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, what about this? And there's this like collaborative spirit that is really important, that not only here but in the real world and at graduate school and whatnot, helps like you as a person find understanding in what you're doing. The collaborative effort that it takes to do a project is monumental. You wouldn't be able to do it on your own. And so like being in a lab it's interesting because the age of like doing stuff on your own is kind of over. It takes a collaborative effort to do things, and when you're in a laboratory space like this, you get really good at working with other people and like telling them what's up, and like just like asking them questions, and they can ask you questions, and you start talking, and you develop ideas, and that you maybe wouldn't have normally come up with originally, and like you can brainstorm on certain ideas and brainstorm on certain projects, and you get like, instead of having the knowledge of one person, you now have the knowledge of 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and maybe 5 because Townsend's a professor.
Right,
so like, who even knows? Maybe it's 6 people. Maybe it's like
probably
2 people stacked on top of each other.
Right.
But yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I'm not a chemist. I'm a physics math dude. So like, I spend a lot of time in the math lounge just looking at a textbook, kind of thinking about really weird, kind of raw, abstract stuff. But so being in a lab gives me like a concrete thing to look at and to work with other people. So that's kind of my take on it.
Is it okay if I say something too? Yeah, so I think the research thing, all these people and all the people in my lab are here by choice. They came here because they're excited about the project that they're working on, and they're passionate about it. So I think in the classroom, you might even read a couple papers, articles that have been peer reviewed, and you learn how to read the paper, and you learn how to dissect it and figure out what the authors are saying. But I think when you're actually doing a project and it's your project, you care, and you learn about the whole field of the science that you're working on, and you look up all these papers that are related to your project, and you start asking questions like, what is this paper saying? I've never seen this before. So you become an expert, I think a local expert in your own field. And that's the only place you can do that is if you actually get into the lab and try to do something that no one else has done. You have to build on the previous knowledge of everyone else who's worked in that field, and you have to become an expert just like them in order to do something new. So I think that's a really cool part of the research. Yeah.
Well, I think that's gonna do it for our session. That was a lot of great content. We thank you guys for coming on. Any last words that you want to say to the viewers at home before you sign off?
Hello, and come to St. Mary's. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, good. Well, thanks, guys.
Okay.